Before starting our program, I would like to ask that everyone please turn off all your electronic devices. Even if you think you've turned them off, check them again. Make sure they're turned off so that the broadcast portion of our meeting will not be interrupted. And yes, our meetings, our luncheon meetings and our annual dinners are taped and they're shown on MeTV throughout the month. So if you can't get enough of it tonight and you want to see it again, tune into MeTV. Also, I wanted to remind everyone and to let those of you that are new tonight know that we have question slips at each of your table. And so as the panelists are speaking, as Rachel is asking questions, if you have a question of your own, feel free to jot it down and just kind of fold it and hold it up, and we'll have board members come through, collect the questions, and then board member Joe Arnold later on during the presentation will ask those questions. Okay, so and now for the broadcast portion of tonight's program. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Stacy Huff and I serve as president of the Louisville Forum. Although tonight's meeting is our annual meeting being held at the FRAZER History Museum, we normally meet on the second Wednesday of every month at Vincenzo's Restaurant. The Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public issues group that was founded in 1984. The forum hosts debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. Although we may take up issues that have a national interest, we try to highlight the local perspective. For more information on the Louisville Forum, our programs, or to make reservations, please visit our website, louisvilleforum.org. Our topic tonight is Women's Suffrage Centennial, what it means for Kentucky women today. Our discussion tonight features 4 more trailblazing women. Please welcome to the stage former Kentucky Governor Martha Layne Collins. The immediate past president of Kentucky League of Women Voters, Bonnie Lynch. And Kentucky State Representative Samara Heavrin. And our moderator this evening, in over 3 decades of experience as a television anchor and reporter, principally on the anchor desk of WHAS-TV in Louisville, she became one of the most trusted and admired television journalists in Kentucky history. Please welcome the Director of Community Engagement at the FRAZER History Museum and the newest member to the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame, Rachel Platt.
Thank you.
All right, and before I turn it over to Rachel, I wanted to share something with you that a fellow board member shared with me this morning. It was timely. In history, so today on February 27th, 1922, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously dismissed a challenge to the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which declares that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. So who knows, without that, these amazing women might not be with us here today. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for asking me to be the moderator. I am truly honored to be in such esteemed company. I really am, so thank you so much. I've been at the FRAZER for a little more than a year. Before that, I was 30 years with WHAS-TV as a journalist. She may not remember this, but before I worked in Louisville, I worked at WOWK-TV in Huntington, West Virginia. And not long after you were elected, I did a series of reports called Women in Charge, and I drove to Frankfurt and interviewed you, and you were so gracious, and I was so inspired. But I remember that interview, and it was such a big deal for me after you were elected governor. Conversations like the one we're going to have tonight are so important because tonight we're talking about women. We are assessing where we are and what more needs to be done. These three panelists are trailblazers in their own right. We're going to talk to them in just a moment. First, congrats to my friend, Sissy Musselman, who has been part of a team of local women, as you know, Sissy, who have been working so hard to bring this exhibit to a reality. And not just the exhibit that we're going to have at the FRAZIER, we have 100 community partners in this. And for this entire year, you're going to see activities and festivities and national speakers. Part of the Pegasus Parade will be donated to this, really to bring it to the national acclaim that it deserves on what we have here. The exhibit that we have is called What is a Vote Worth? Suffrage, Then and Now. And when you think about that question, what is a vote worth, you have to understand that the struggle for women to get that right took 72 years. 72 years, that struggle. Many of the biggest names you know, like Susan B. Anthony, fought her entire life, but did you know she died before that amendment was ever passed? Her story is more common than not. The first Women's Rights Convention, Seneca Falls, New York, 1848, organized by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. None of the women of that generation were alive in 1920 when passage finally came. I always think about that with what is a vote worth for those women who fought so hard but never even got the right to vote. You're going to hear names maybe that you've heard before with some of those, but I guarantee in our exhibit you're going to hear names that you've never heard. I bet she's heard of some of this Kentuckians, though. Mary Britton, Josephine Henry, and wonder why have not I heard of these women, their incredible passion, their accomplishments, and their fight. Well, we are trying to change some of that. It's going to cover tough history, the split between many white women and African American women during the struggle to vote, who was left behind and why. You'll learn about who was against women getting the right to vote and who were their allies. We'll also cover the voting rights of 1965, what obstacles still exist in the present day, not just for women, but people of color. You have to understand where you've been to see where you're going and to assess progress. And tonight, that's what we're going to do, to see how much we've made or haven't made with our panelists. And thank you, that was so smart. I appreciate it. We've got water over here for you ladies, just to let you know. We want to let people know, again, this is going to kind of gauge where we are, and we're going to talk about some of that history. We're going to do our introductions now. We're going to introduce each panelist one at a time. After each brief intro, you all have a few minutes to talk, not an opening statement, but just a little bit about yourselves, we promise. And then we're going to start our conversation. I have so many questions, and I know our audience does as well. Our first guest was one of the 58 people elected governor in Kentucky. Only one of them is a woman. When Martha Layne Collins was elected in 1983, she was the highest-ranking female Democrat in the United States. The Shelby County native also served as clerk of the Kentucky Supreme Court and as lieutenant governor, a former public school teacher. In Jefferson and Woodford counties, Governor Collins' term included education reform and funding increases. Yet historians regard her most significant accomplishment as governor, recruiting Toyota to locate an $800 million manufacturing plant in Georgetown. It was a big deal. I remember covering that story for years. Toyota Kentucky is America's first and the world's largest Toyota manufacturing facility. After her term as governor, she became president of St. Catherine's College for 6 years, also served as the executive in residence of the University of Louisville School of Business, director for International Business and Management Center at the University of Kentucky. So please welcome Governor Martha Layne Collins.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here tonight. This is a great crew, in spite of Sissy's recognition. But anyway, I've known you a year or two, right? But anyway, I'm delighted to be here. I taught at Fairdale and Seneca. I'm an honorary alumni of Seneca now because I was there, and I appreciate that. Both of our children, Steve and Marla, were born at the old Norton's Hospital. And I lived in Shelbyville, so we were in Baghdad. We ran back and forth shopping in Louisville. You know, that was the place to be. So I'm delighted to be back in Louisville. I have lots of friends and supporters and have tried very hard to do as much as we possibly could in a short 4 years to take care of Louisville, Jefferson County, and all the other 119 counties of Kentucky.
All right, very good. Now we're going to ask questions in a moment. We just wanted you to brief remarks. We'll introduce our next two guests. Our next guest has also broken barriers, also was a teacher, we want you to know. Bonnie Lynch hails from Oklahoma. Met her husband while he was attending college, then she moved to Kentucky. Like Governor Collins, Bonnie was a teacher, a middle school teacher at Fort Campbell. She taught for 36 years. She was the first African-American woman to be elected to the Christian County School Board. And she also broke barriers by being elected as the first African-American woman to serve as the president of the League of Women Voters in Kentucky. She also worked in the library in Christian County for 7 years, implementing Dolly Parton's Imagination Library on literacy. And we should say her husband, Wendell Lynch, just sworn in as the interim mayor of Hopkinsville, becoming the first African-American to serve as mayor for an extended period. So congratulations to him.
Thank you.
So please welcome Bonnie Lynch.
Well, good evening. It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation. You know, I've had lots of opportunities, and I tried to make good on all of them. The League of Women Voters, great group of women, the best and smartest in Kentucky, I have to say. And I've learned so much from them through the years. I've been a member for 35 years, so it's a long time. But I've grown and developed into who I am now. I do have 2 children. My daughter, Shayla, she's over there, wonderful. She's from lives in Lexington, and she is so fierce. I'm so proud of her and all the women in that generation because they are going to kick butt. And I just love it. I love it.
Now, some would say you're fierce.
Oh, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit. But anyway, it's nice to be here, and I look forward to the questions.
All right, very good. All right, our final guest is Samara Heavrin, Kentucky State Representative, 18th District. 3 months ago, voters in Grayson and Hardin counties made history when they elected Samara Heavrin to the Kentucky State House. At 27 years old, she became the youngest woman ever elected to the Kentucky State House of Representatives.
Yay.
All right. Just a couple more things. A 2014 graduate of Western Kentucky University, Samara interned for U.S. Congressman Brett Guthrie, worked as a staff assistant for U.S. Senator Rand Paul before appointments as unclaimed property director, director of initiatives in the Kentucky State Treasurer's Office. In the Kentucky House of Representatives, Samara serves on the House committees of Veterans, Military Affairs and Public Protection, Transportation, and Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs. They all have long names.
Yes.
I learned that. So please welcome Representative Samara Heavrin.
It is such an honor to be here tonight, sitting on this stage with these 3 strong women, and so just thank you for the opportunity. Tonight with my guest, as you all heard at the beginning, I brought my mama. She's been my #1 supporter through this entire adventure. And then my best friend since middle school. I think if someone's going to stick with you that long in politics, you might as well keep them for a little bit. But it's a huge honor to be here tonight, and it's a huge honor to be representing the youth in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
All right, we're going to talk about that in just a second. All right, now we're going to start with some questions. So, Governor Collins, you were the first female governor in Kentucky, elected in 1983, as we know. There has not been a female governor since in Kentucky. There are 9 women, by my count, serving as governors in other states right now. So, twofold question. When you ran, did you feel the weight of that history when you ran for governor and when you served?
I don't think so. I'd been involved in the party and had been campaigning for other candidates and getting to know as much as I could about the state. You know, I say we have 120 counties. It's like having 120 children. They're all different. They all have different personalities and needs and desires, and so that keeps you busy too. But no, I had just been caught up by working in other campaigns, and people came to me. My husband had already run for a couple of other offices, and so they had helped. My kids, Steve and Marla, liked to campaign. They started when they were 6 and 9, working in campaigns. And so it was just one of those things, there was a desire to help the state of Kentucky. And I used as education and economic development my two priorities because they go together so well. If you invest in your people, then you can do more in economic development.
I think that's interesting, though, that history didn't really weigh on you, knowing that you were a barrier breaker, certainly, in the state of Kentucky. So let me ask you this. Your thoughts on the progress we've made or haven't made with women serving as governor. No other female, as you know, has been elected in Kentucky. Since then, we have 9 other women. What do you make of the progress or lack of it? How do you view that with women in politics when it comes to the gubernatorial position?
Well, it gets harder and harder for women to run for office, whatever it is. It's difficult. And I think that there are a lot of times, I mean, that's a real sacrifice. You have to really want it. Yeah. And women have to work harder than men when they're campaigning, when they're trying to...
Say that again.
Be happy to. Women have to work harder than men.
And tell me why. Is it to overcome that stigma? Why is that?
Well, you know, I think sometimes things have changed some. You know, that was what, 30 years ago? That was an eternity ago. But I think that it's harder for women to raise money to some extent. I think that, you know, a woman is concerned if she has a family. Should I be doing this or should I stay home with my kids? I know I questioned it myself, and I thought, when I'm 90 years old and I'm sitting in my rocking chair, am I going to regret the fact that I didn't get to go to all their ball games or their, you know, activities at school and whatever? I feel that I made the right decision because the kids were involved. They grew a lot. They have friends all over the state. It was a great experience for them. But I think sometimes women are hesitant to do that, to take that. I think there are some husbands that don't want them to run. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of acknowledgments that you have to make with regard to income and all kinds of things now, the laws. And so a lot of times maybe they don't want to share. They don't want their wives out running. I think we have to, you know, most of the time women, I don't want to make this sound like women are mistreated or anything like that, but you just have to be very firm. And when a woman says something, she means it, right? And,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I want to do. More to come on that. So, Representative Heavrin, let's go to this. 27 years old, you're the youngest female ever elected to the Kentucky General Assembly. You tell me you got the political bug in high school with the trip. Tell us that, and then we're going to talk about what you call a double whammy with gender and age. Yeah. So let's talk about how you got the political bug.
Okay. I was very lucky. Like I said, I'm from Litchfield, Grayson County, and so we all have electric co-ops here in Kentucky. So my electric co-op is Warren RECC. And so my junior year, well, I guess the summer before my senior year of high school, I got chosen to go on a week-long trip with Warren REC to tour Washington, D.C. And it was really a monumental, really a pivotal moment in my life because it made me realize that that was an option for employment, that it was an option to go and serve your people in Washington, D.C., but still be a proud Kentuckian. And so that was something I kept in the back of my mind. I thought how wonderful it would be to live in Washington, D.C. or Alexandria and really just be at the heart of the United States. And so that's what got me started in wanting to be in politics and being in government, just serving people.
So 27 years old, so you're
young.
I know. No, but what I love is that the trend of younger and females, even though we've got a long way to go, I think we would all agree on that tonight. So at 27 years old, you said the double whammy when we talked by phone earlier this week, that youth and being a female. Have you felt like you've had to overcome more because of those two things?
You know, in some instances, yes, in some instances, no. I remember when I was running, you know, so long ago, back in September and October of last year, you know, it came up that someone recognized that I would be the youngest female ever elected to the Kentucky State House. And I remember thinking, I can't share that with anybody because my youth equals an experience to some people. Although I've spent my career you know, working in government and serving people, serving our commonwealth. And I feel like that really brought me a unique skill set for this position to know how government works.
But you didn't want that out. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Did opponents use your experience at all, or youth?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of, I had a great opponent. You know, we ran a really clean race, and I appreciate that. But I think a lot of people were concerned with my inexperience because of my youth, when really I was thinking, gosh, I'm the most qualified candidate up here because I know government and I know how this works, and I've worked with the Kentucky General Assembly. And so that was just something really to get out there. But I think a lot of people looked at me and knew I'd gone to Washington, D.C., I'd worked in Frankfurt, and so they knew I did have experience. But really it was a lot of investment in believing in me, and I appreciated that so much from all my supporters. Because they really were supportive of that idea that I am young, but think of the fresh face I could bring to Frankfurt and the fresh face I could bring to the 18th district.
Right, the flip side is that is the freshness instead of the same old, same old.
Yes, and you know, my favorite part, since I've gotten to Frankfurt, everyone on both sides of the aisle have been so welcoming, and I just appreciate that. They've you know, welcomed me with open arms, and they all want to see my success. But I remember my first day walking into an interim joint committee hearing. They have those when we're out of session, just kind of provide updates on things that are going on. And I walk in, and I'm really feeling myself. Here I am, a newly elected state representative, and I hear someone say, "Oh, there's Samara Heavrin." I'm like, who's ever cared about Samara Heavrin? Like, this is great. And I walk in and I'm like, okay. So I go up and I see one of my colleagues, and they're like, oh, welcome, you know, welcome transportation. We're so excited to have you here. And another member walked up. He's like, oh, are you our new intern? I was like, oh. So politics humbles you very quickly.
That's okay. After you got in there, they knew not an intern.
But you know, it was one of those things of being firm. And so a lot of my colleagues, they will kid me and say, oh, well, we have ties older than Samara. And so I say, well, I have nothing as old as you.
Good answer.
That's a real good one. That's a good one.
And my guess is that quiets the room.
They get so tickled, so they start more. And
well, you got to give it right back. So good for you. All right, Bonnie, let's talk about you as a trailblazer. First African-American woman. You broken barriers of your own. You talked about that as your double whammy. Female and African-American.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, you know, again, I'm not from Kentucky. I am, but I've lived in Kentucky forever. But I didn't know a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't know me, but they knew my husband. His family's massive. And so the one thing I had to do was, you know, get people, they knew the family name, but they didn't know me, so I had to get out there and meet people. And then I also had, and being an educator helped me a lot because I had met a lot of the administrators or whatever. So that was kind of interesting. And then being the first African-American woman, I had a group of, I called them my cadre of retired teachers. And our school board meetings were televised. So they would watch me every school board meeting. And then I would get calls from them after the meeting, and they would kind of critique what happened or whatever, and make sure that, you know, told me I looked nice or whatever. So, you know, I had that, you know, that wasn't a stressor. I thought it was real cute that they were interested, and they were trying to keep me on point. So, you know, just being the first African-American woman, I never really thought much about it, that it was just something I knew I could do, and I knew I would be very good at it. So I was great for that opportunity. And then, you know, the cadre of women who, these school teachers that, you know, really kept up with my progress and made sure I was doing the right thing. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you with the League of Women Voters, you came armed with some statistics for me, because I wanted to talk about women as a voting bloc. As far as how they fit in Kentucky, are more registered than men.
Yes.
When going to the polls, do women vote more than men? Give us a couple of statistics so we just get a feel for how women vote in Kentucky.
Well, what I found in searching was kind of difficult to find, but that, of course, in Christian County, the county that I live, there are more women registered than men, and even in state-wise, there are more women registered than men. So really, we ought to be running the place, you know.
Well. But that leads me to my next question. So let me just, Kentucky ranks 8th worst in the nation in the percentage of female legislators. Women make up more than half of Kentucky's 4.5 million population. Only 4 of the state's 38 Senate seats are made up by women. 19 of the 100 seats in the House are held by women. So I will ask each of you, what in the heck is going on?
one thing that Governor said about fundraising, that was one of, when I did my little research, that was one thing I found, it was difficult for women to fundraise. But also, I guess overall, and then it was hard to balance family, you know, and politics. That was one of the obstacles in the way. And then the third one that I found was, they called it double binding, which was a word I wasn't familiar with. But what it is you want to come across as a strong woman, but not an aggressive woman. So it's difficult to find that balance because, you know, if you're...
but is that fair? I mean, we always talk about that.
No, it's not fair at all. But,
I mean, have we gotten better about that with strong versus aggressive or the B word or whatever people want?
I don't think so. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. You can be a strong woman, but you can't be called an aggressive woman or seen as an aggressive woman because then, you know, they're liable to call you the, you know, then you're the B word because you're too much that way. So it's difficult to find that balance. But I think that's what I found, you know, and it's difficult for women. And the good old boy system is still alive and well, and they'll still meet and have their meetings and exclude the women. And I'm sure that's still going on now.
So maybe what we need, excuse me, is more young people, because the young people can slip in a way, okay? In other words, there's not the resentment for her, maybe, or the threat. I mean, she's won, and obviously she had to work hard to get that done, and all the support that she had. But maybe that's part of our answer, is to start them much younger and get them involved.
So let me ask you, do we think that there's a different mindset with younger women today? Because, as we said, you kind of had to tiptoe around. If you're too aggressive, you're the B word. I mean, that always happened in, you know, workplaces that I was in. You know, the B word never really bothered me too much. So I was like, you know, because I would see that my male counterparts were not given the same labels, and you just went, well, okay. So let me ask you, is there a different mindset? Because I loved the fact that we said fierce. We think of this younger generation as fierce and they're going to kick butt. I think that was the word you used. So is there a different mindset? Do you feel like you're tiptoeing around aggressive versus strong and B word and all that kind of stuff?
You know, at first I did, but I just stopped caring, to be honest. You know, I think it all begins, you know, too, with how you're raised. I was raised by a mama and a grandma that said I could do anything in this world that I wanted.
Exactly.
So, and I think it starts at home. I think it starts with you all in the crowd. If you are a leader in your company or you're a leader in your community, start investing in youth and start investing in women, because that's what we need. Because a lot of times, you know, I'm sure all of us here, we all have role models, but at some point we've all been told, no, you can't do that. But whenever you sit down and you get back up and say, I can do that, but it really does, it starts with the investment in the people in this room by saying, you know what, I'm gonna go out and help somebody because they're young and they don't have all the tools yet. But whenever you can invest and grow something, it's gonna bloom and it's gonna blossom. And that's exactly what we need here in Kentucky right now with our youth.
And we are seeing a lot more groups like emerge. There are different groups with different political parties who really their sole purpose is getting women to run, helping finance, groom, all of the above. So we're seeing a lot more grassroots initiatives like that. So you had talked about that, role models. So let me ask each of you, did you have a role model? Was there somebody that you looked up to as far as a female at all?
Not in the state necessarily. I mean, you know, Thelma Stovall had been there. Frances Jones Mills had been there. So other women had run for other offices, constitutional offices. And Thelma ran, as you know, for governor. But I guess Eleanor Roosevelt was the lady that I really watched because of her, you know, strength and everything. I think times obviously are changing. When I was there, a woman had to be, the way you approach things, I say sometimes we're our own worst enemy. You know, you got to know the people that you're working with. You've got to know their attitudes, what they like, what they don't like. And instead of being just lowering your head and ramming into the wall and saying it's my way or the highway, you can sometimes, it can be their idea. or they can be a member of the team. I had to do that. I mean, because when I went in, if I'd picked up that phone at the side of the desk and say, this is Governor Collins and I want this done, there would have been somebody in some office in state government that would have said, well, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So,
great idea, but we'll do it maybe.
Sounds to me like you had to play the game a little bit.
Well, you played the game a little bit, but one of the things I tried to do was to do teams. See, I'm a great believer in teams. Mm-hmm. Men think of things we don't. We think of things they don't. And so if they're brought in and they're part of the team and you're asking them their opinion, mm-hmm. and, well, what do you think? And, you know, some women don't like to ask for help. That didn't bother me. You know, I'd say, hey, I need your help. Would you help me? It's kind of hard for a man to tell me no. You know? So there are ways to work things so that everybody feels like they've contributed, mm-hmm. and it's not a threat.
Right.
You don't need to be a threat most of the time. Now, there are times when you have to lay the
to
law
be firm.
down. Yeah.
And how did you do that? Give me a conversation that you had.
Oh, I can't remember.
You can't? I mean, was there any time you had to school somebody on a man, and how did you do that?
Well, I just think you bring them in as partners. See, I work bipartisan. You know, when I had a problem in Moorhead, I sent Louis Nunn and Ned Breathitt up there to help solve it because I was having to go overseas, trying to bring companies in. I was working on education. I only had 4 years. Now, if I'd had 8, okay?
Right, because at that time you couldn't run.
No, you couldn't run. You couldn't succeed yourself.
Right.
So it's just a matter of every personality. Part of that I think I got from teaching school, because you know your students.
A collaborator.
Yes.
You know your students, mm-hmm. and you learn, and you know what they like, what they don't like, what approach to take.
So a lot of team building.
Yeah.
So Eleanor Roosevelt would be one that you said. How about you for a role model?
Personally, it's my mama and my grandma, but in a political world, it's Kentucky State Treasurer Allison Ball. I worked for her for almost 3 years, and whenever she was elected, she was actually elected the youngest female constitutional officer in the United States in 2015. And so I really felt like she was a trailblazer in herself and just being youthful. And so that really inspired me when it came time, the opportunity came for me to run, and she was so encouraging of getting out there and running. I really look up to her, and I look at all these women that are in politics as trailblazers for me to be where I'm at today.
How about you?
I guess I had an offensive line. It would be my mother, grandmother, and all my aunties, because growing up, I never heard you can't do this because you're female or you're black or you're poor. I just didn't hear that. It was not drilled in my head, so I wasn't fed that line that I couldn't do, I couldn't do something. So it was the total opposite. I could do anything, because they had poured all their positivity, everything into me, so that, there was no challenge that I couldn't handle. So if you told me I could do something, I didn't believe it. Because, see, they had told me I could do anything. And so I believed that. So I think you're right. Starting at an early age, being positive, getting women involved, girls involved in whatever it is. But start at an early age, because I think that made the difference for me. As a result, my children, they know they can do anything, because I told them that.
If you had to say one trait that you think took you to where you are, just one trait, I want you to think about that and let me know what it would be. That you would say, boy, if you're looking to do this, this trait worked well for me. Governor Collins?
Patience, which is not me at all.
Patience,
no,
okay.
I want everything done yesterday. I don't know, I guess just respect for people. When I was elected and they bring school kids in, and they'd go out and put them on the stairways, going up. It was great to see little boys come in. They were so excited. They were looking at me. In fact, many of them were looking at me differently than the girls were, because it's like, oh, well, my mom could be governor. So it was an awakening. It really impressed me to see that.
I like that it wasn't just in the young girls,
right.
It was in the boys as well, just as important for them to see that. A trait.
Probably bluntness. You don't have to worry about what I think, because I will share it if I don't appreciate it, or if I do appreciate it, I'll share it. But probably being blunt, but probably with that being bold. You know, if there's something you really feel like needs to be said and it's, you know, going to be helpful for the conversation, don't be afraid to say it, because your opinion matters, no matter where you are, no matter what gender you are.
You know your worth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
You summed
that's
it up
key.
very well, Governor.
No, but that's exactly,
Yeah.
that my opinion matters just as much as yours does.
Yes.
Mine is also just telling the truth. You know, I see things in clearly, and so if you want to know, I'll tell you. So I'm not afraid to tell you what I see or what I know. And sometimes people can take that and sometimes they can't. But don't ask me and don't look like you want to ask me, because I'll tell you, you know. Yeah.
I want to go to what women bring to the table that perhaps their male counterparts don't. So these are words from Kentuckian Mary Barclay in 1884 in Kentucky. She was a leader in the suffrage movement, and she said, "Men need women to participate in politics because you need her sense of justice and moral courage to execute the laws. You need her for all that is just, merciful, and good in government. But above all, women themselves need the ballot for self-protection." What are your thoughts of what she said, and does this hold true today?
I don't know. Self-protection, the ballot. Suppose we do need the ballot. We did need to be able to vote, even though my ladies, my heritage didn't get to vote in 1920 when we voted like
Much
45
later.
years later. Yeah, so we were behind the 8 ball, and we had to go jump through a lot of hoops before things got right for us. But we did need the ballot. We did need to vote. We need to be at the table. Yeah.
Your all's thoughts about those words?
I think women bring such a, well, and I'm going to say, I think all genders and all ages bring different perspectives. Maybe women look at things differently than men. Maybe they can look at the bigger picture, or they can be more sensitive about subjects when making decisions about policy and how it's going to affect. But I've actually been experiencing this with being a new representative, is the generational part of youth. We all look at things so differently because we all had different issues that were part of our growing up or part of society. Currently we're facing the opioid epidemic. That's probably not something that Governor Collins faced when she was growing up, or what Bonnie faced when she was growing up. And so I think that, where we come from in our age really brings a lot to the table too. And that's something I've noticed just with youth. Whatever age, but we all have different experiences that we can bring. And I think those are actually more probably monumental in change than even maybe gender.
With you all watching the presidential election and just the debate the other night, I was just curious your insight into that. Do you think the female candidates in this race are treated differently than the men candidates? Are we past that? What you've seen in this race as far as how the women and male candidates are treated, same or different? What are your thoughts?
I don't know that I've seen a difference. And I watch them closely. I've not seen a difference how women are treated, or the questions, or how the media is treating them. I don't see any difference.
Because some people would say that some of the female candidates haven't gotten the same amount of attention. I've read that before. I've read a little bit that some of the criticism of the women when they get aggressive on stage, are the descriptions the same? Are they different? That's what I'm curious what you all
That's the
think.
point. Women can't be aggressive. You have to be very careful how you state things.
But I will say in the last debate, there were women who were very
I
assertive.
understand
They
that.
both were
But
right?
but did you look at the numbers after the debate? In
So
some
that's what
cases,
you're saying.
in some cases it worked. It was okay. It was the right topic or approached the right way. Excuse me.
Need some water?
No, I wish I
Okay.
would water. But it's just, those are the kinds of things women, every time, no matter when you open your mouth, you have to be careful. Because especially, I'm envious of her in a way, because she's young and it's a different approach
Different
now
time,
than it
yes.
was when I was there.
Yes.
If I approach some things the way she does now, well, I wouldn't have been able to get anything done. There would have been a wall built. And I don't mean that, because the men were very cooperative. I'm not talking, anti, okay? I'm
no,
talking
no, it's just how you had to handle yourself.
It's the way you have to approach things. For example, the reason we need more women, I mean, we need more women.
Yes.
And one of the reasons, and it's a simplistic thing, I was in a meeting one day, we had flooding in eastern Kentucky, and we were sending people out. Well, the men were thinking about gas and electricity and roads and all that kind of stuff. You know what I was thinking about? Were the wives at home with the kids. There was no diapers, there was no baby food, there was no this, there was no that. If you have to provide that so the men can stay at work over here and do their job. Katrina did it to them in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. New Orleans, so many of the police and firemen and everybody left to go home because they were worried about their own families. So it's a matter of our approach, not feeling or saying, oh, we can't do it, you know, we're weaklings and we need whatever, but you're working together on an equal basis. I'm thinking of things, you're thinking of things, you know, and that's the way we make things happen. And women, I think, it makes them feel like they are needed. They do have a role to play. And that doesn't mean that the women can't think of electricity or roads or whatever. We can do that too. I'm not limiting us over here, but I'm saying think the big picture, the big picture. And you have to think also, and remember, I was way back then, and things are different today. And so I maybe sound like a woman who is, you know, and that's why I said I don't want to sound like I was picked on or anything. But it's a different approach today. You got younger legislators, you got younger people out in the counties. So it's a different situation, and I'm delighted. Anyway, I can go on and on.
Did you all have anything to add to that? Because I know Joe's got some questions here in just a second. I want to ask you just one final thing. If you had to give one piece of advice to a woman who was, whether it be political office or anything in life, on what it takes to get there, what would your all's piece of advice be to her?
Mine would be for her to find someone that can help her. Workshops, classes, any female organizations, find someone to help you get your campaign together and to know what the issues are, and just get yourself ready. You got to get prepared to know what you're going to entail, what you're going to hit.
When I talk to elementary school groups or young groups, I always say be kind, because kindness will get you anywhere that you want. Work hard, have a hard work ethic. No one can take away a hard work ethic from you. And then believe in yourself. I realized when when the opportunity came for me to run, I didn't believe in myself at first. You know, I got the call that my predecessor was resigning. I thought, well, who are we going to get to run? Like, what are we going to do? And a day later, someone called and asked, and they're like, why don't you run? I was like, oh, not me. But it really took, and it was so funny because I remember Treasurer Ball, whenever she would speak to groups, she would always say, women don't believe in themselves to run. They have to be asked to run. And I thought, is that really true? And it is true, because I had to be asked to run before I would even consider myself running in that position, because I was hard on myself. I don't have the experience, and is this what I really, you know, is this what the 18th district really wants? And so be kind, work hard, and believe in yourself.
You know, and we were talking about this, I can't remember who I was talking to in this group, because you said, oh, me? It's like, I guess my question would be to men in this audience, do they have the same thought process? Do those questions occur to them? Me? Do I have the experience? Or do they just do it? And I guess I don't know if we're built differently. Do all women have those questions? Do men have the same questions? I don't know. Men? We'll get to that. I just wonder, because you said sometimes with women, it's like we kind of have to talk ourselves into it, kind of thing. So we'll ask, Joe, you have to ask men that question. And
Sure.
Did you have just what your piece of advice would be?
I think you have to encourage women to feel good about themselves, to have the self-confidence, and we're all going to have different approaches. I mean, women don't all go about things the same way.
Right.
And so we just have to understand that people are people, and you treat them accordingly, and respect. I worry a little bit about how sometimes we just almost roll over people. You know, where's the politeness? Where the manners? Where's the some of the other things that?
That's been tough in politics
Of
lately.
the old school, I feel like you can get a lot done. But
So more the collaborator is where I still go back when I think of everything you're saying and team, and really that is gender neutral.
right.
Yeah, that's gender neutral. All right, Joe.
Hey, Rachel. As the man up here. No, Rachel and I worked together for a number of years at WHAS television. In the newsroom, there was never any question who was in charge.
No, that's
Okay.
not true. That's not true.
You commanded respect because you earned it. And everyone here would agree with that, I guarantee
And
it.
you never
Okay.
called me. And you never called me the B word.
I knew better. All right. These questions, by the way, are a Louisville Forum practice. And by the way, if you still have a question, please raise that, and we'll be happy to come around, one of our board members, and pick it up from you. But we read them verbatim, so I'm apologizing in advance. Okay. For any of the panel, was there a time when you wished you could have told a man in politics that he should look at the issue from a woman's perspective and did not, and why not?
Would you take me back to the first?
Sure. Was there a time when you wished you could have told a man in politics that he should look at this issue from a woman's perspective, but you didn't do that? And why didn't you do that? Or just maybe recall a situation where you already pointed out the Eastern Kentucky situation.
I kind of think I told them the woman's perspective. You know, like, I have this idea. What do you think about it? And then they can chime in or make corrections as they saw that. So I think it's just an open line of communication.
You know, I think it's a really good question. You know, I'm kind of in the mindset currently is that everyone brings something to the table. And I think whenever you can look at all perspectives and maybe encourage, you know, your male counterpart that your idea is the best without saying that by being polite and saying, well, have you thought about it in this perspective? I think it's all about wording, but I really believe that everyone has a right to their own opinion, but also I think that they bring something valuable to the table because they've lived an experience that I haven't or maybe you haven't. But I generally just try to and make sure that they know how I feel about the opinion and they don't have to question what the woman's opinion is. They hear it.
Ms. Lynch?
I'm thinking, I was on the school board, so I can remember some discipline hearings where some of the men may have wanted to do some harsher punishment on some of the children. And so I would just flip it and say, what if this was your child? And then they kind of back up a little bit and think about it. But, you know, it used to be kick them out, expel them, whatever. But I would just flip it around and say, what if it was your child? Would you not give them a second chance? Can we think of some other things? And so that made them, they stopped being so hard-nosed, and the meetings got a lot easier.
It's hard for children to grow up. I mean, it's a whole lot harder for them to grow up than it was when I grew up. You know, things have changed, and it's really hard, and there's more anxiety in the classroom today than I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
So it's tough.
We have several questions asking about the Me Too movement and asking about any personal experiences as well as observations of what you witnessed or experienced yourself. Perhaps Ms. Lynch will start with you and go the other direction.
I'm trying to think of any. I pass. Let me think.
Youth. You know, I think I've really, in the Kentucky General Assembly, I've not had a Me Too movement, or I've not had a Me Too moment. I think just growing up as a young woman, I remember when I was in Washington, D.C., I was at a big event. I remember a man put his hand behind my back and just at the small of my back, and I was so uncomfortable because I thought that was unprofessional, inappropriate. But I don't really look at it as a Me Too movement, moment. But it was this feeling I realized that I don't know what gave him that clue that I thought that was okay, because it was not. It was very inappropriate. And it really it made me think about how many experiences have happened before that to other women. And, you know, I encourage everyone here to raise their children not to touch women like that. Don't touch anybody. But, you know, I realized, because I think as a woman, you think, well, is that a Me Too movement? Is it not? Is it? And you go back and forth, and it should never have to be a question for women whether you get inappropriately touched on the small of your back. It just shouldn't happen. And so I guess that's kind of mine. That's something that I remember. And it really made me be a lot tougher, and it made me build up a wall. And I think it made me, some might refer to me as the B word sometimes. But it really makes you put up a guard, and it makes you feel you've got to be more secure around certain people.
Or if people, I just thought of something. If people call you sweetie or darling or that sort of thing, you know, and I'll just say my name's Bonnie. You know, my name's Bonnie. I'm not sweetie, darling, or any of those words. And after I speak, they know she's not, you know. So I don't have any problem with that anymore, but that kind of thing still happens a lot, I think. Yeah.
I think women have to be very, very careful. If you watch television and you see some of the lines on their blouses and things like that, or their short skirts, and sometimes our kids want to go to school in inappropriate, in my opinion, clothing. Sometimes there's a, you know, an encouragement, and so some take advantage of that or think that's what all women like.
When you were governor, Joe, just let me intervene real fast. Did you have like a uniform, a set thing? Did you think about what you wore and how that was going to come off as governor? I was just curious, as the first female governor of Kentucky.
Always a suit with some sort of top. And,
always a suit. I do remember that. That was the shoulder pad days, right? That was the, yeah.
And I'd get letters occasionally that said, don't wear a certain suit anymore, it makes you look tired. I got letters that said, don't, your derby hat was too big, we couldn't see your face. So they were well-meaning. I mean, this was somebody who was trying to help me, and I was grateful for it.
I wasn't always grateful for all the mail I got. I answered every piece of mail, even though, but I will say, every woman up here must feel that you said your friends would critique.
Right.
I don't think that men have ever gone through the same scrutiny when it comes to the physical appearance of anybody up here, ever. I will be shocked, I will say that, because I think that people just feel that women need to know, you know, that, and I'm gonna tell you, and I mean, all those letters, I will tell you, some of them were tough to take, and I would write them all back, but sometimes I just always felt like that was one of the things that women always ended up getting, is the visual.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry, Joe, I had to get on my soapbox.
Never apologize to me, Rachel. What should the Commonwealth do to increase the educational attainment of women in the Commonwealth? That would include, the questioner asks, preventing high school dropouts, enrollment in technical programs, college or GED completion. So again, the educational attainment of women.
That's down your alley. Aren't you working on that these days?
It is a hot topic in the legislature. You know, I really think it starts with, and this is an issue I ran on, I think it starts with us as a Commonwealth of changing our rhetoric that everyone's got to go to college. Because not everyone's going to go to college, and you know what, that's a-okay. Because like I said earlier, everyone brings a different skill set to the table, and we need to have plumbers, we need to have electricians, just as much as we need to have college professors and lawyers and government officials. And I think it's whenever you set up a standard, you set kids up for failure, and that's not fair to them. But I want to reiterate, it goes back to this room and investing in youth and investing in people that maybe they didn't get the same opportunity as you.
I think sometimes, excuse me.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, as long as we have programs for alternative programs, because like you said, everyone doesn't have to go to college, but they have to go to some kind of post-secondary something so they can make a living, and they have that available.
Well, and you know, our teachers are overloaded and work very, very hard, and we're short, I think, on counselors, and you know, so all of this, and some parents don't help their children that much. Part of it because a lack of time or interest, or maybe just don't know themselves. Nowadays, kids have all kinds of opportunities, and they've changed. You know, a whole different sort of jobs and that kind of thing. But I'd like to, I said, if I had a wish, I would like to have enough money to send every senior high school student overseas. Let them go overseas. Let them get a passport. Let them fly over the pond, so to speak. Let them go to another country, eat the food, see the people that are there, see how things go, what it's like. Because they don't get enough exposure. But they don't get enough exposure even in our state, as far as, you know, maybe field trips and opportunities to go through factories. Or I think our children sometimes don't have, don't realize, because if they had a challenge out there, if we could put something out there, and we know by 7th grade whether they're going to be good in math or whatever they're good in, and say, this is a possibility for you, and work with the teachers so that that child is exposed to the opportunities in business or something. If they have a goal, something to work for, I don't think we'd have as much drug problem. I really don't. I think they'd have something to look forward to, because some kids do not have anything to look forward to.
And just to add to that, I mean, think about the teachers that we know now, and this is a great example of generational change, I think, is because school is so much different from when I was there, from you were there, from when you were there.
Really?
You know, a lot of kids, or they're just trying to make it through the day because they have an abusive parent, or they have a parent on drugs, or they're being raised by their aunt and their uncle. And, you know, that's another example of, you know, loving people, just loving people through, and making sure that they're invested, because maybe you're the only person that's in their life that they know that you love them, and that could really change the outcome for a child.
This questioner perhaps works for the FRAZER, Rachel. Women have come a long way in 100 years. What are the key issues, in your view, facing women in the U.S. and the world in the 21st century?
Well, first, do we all agree with the assessment? We've come a long way. Yeah, okay.
But we've got a long way to go. We're not done yet. We're not done yet, and we can look at the makeup of our House and Senate here in Kentucky. We're not done yet, and we should be, our numbers should be at least 50-50, you know, that we're in Frankfurt helping with the policy, making the writing of the bills and that sort of thing. We need more women involved. Yep. They've got to be there.
And they got to feel good about themselves. They got to know their value.
Right.
They got to know that their ability and everything is worth something.
Yes.
And the other part of that question was, what issues do you think are the biggest issues facing women today in Kentucky and the country, if you all had to say, like top two, maybe?
Always education. Not getting enough, not enough training, not enough mentors, not enough guidance counselors, not enough. We don't have enough to even make girls feel good about themselves. You know, we're missing that.
Well, and if you look, we're coming up with some real shortages. Shortages in healthcare, shortages in education, shortages in whatever, and it's not that we don't have maybe the people out there, but they haven't been channeled. They haven't been helped to make decisions or help financially to know that they can accomplish something. It's just a big, gosh, we're down on the bottom right now, aren't we? Kind of.
That's why I was
I
wondering.
don't mean to sound that way. But
No,
I mean,
but I just
there are
wondered what you thought the issues facing women are. Is it pay? Is it, you know, what kinds of things do you think?
Two issues that are a little, I had this in my notes for today, but Kentucky has one of the highest female incarceration rates in our country, and our maternal mortality rate is skyrocketing. I think those are two things as well. Criminal justice reform for women, men too, but you know, specifically for this for women.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the mortality rate. Just because it doesn't happen to us doesn't mean it's not happening. You know, and especially in women of color. We've got to be able to address these issues, and you know, it starts with those things, I think.
Those are good issues that because I know HAS is in the House because Tegna, the parent company, had done a big series on infant mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate, and especially women of color. I mean, it's jaw-dropping.
Right. lack of access to services.
Right.
I just don't have them.
We have several questions again based upon or about reproductive rights and about whether women are expected to have a certain stance on that issue based upon your sex or your gender. One questioner asks specifically about a Senate bill that will let any healthcare worker deny services based on conscience, and can you reconcile your position on that based upon you being a woman?
I've not read it yet. It's in the Senate. I know what bill you're talking about, but I've not read the bill, so I don't feel comfortable making a comment just because of my lack of knowledge on the issue or the specific language in the bill. You know, I think I'll start with the first question, if that's okay. You know, whenever I ran, it was very surprising I was pro-life, being a young female and being a Republican and then being pro-life. And I really believe that the individual liberty is with the baby. But I really believe that it's not my spot to judge either. Everyone has to make decisions. And, you know, while I am pro-life and I support pro-life policies, I'm never going to judge anybody for their past because God calls us to love everybody. And that's the type of legislator I want to be. And honestly, let's be real, the type of human I want to be, which is the most important. And so that was a big conversation. A lot of people would be surprised when they realized I was 27 and I was pro-life. But I'm just a believer that it's the individual liberty of the child. That's the important part for me. What was the last part of that question?
Just whether there's an expectation to have a certain opinion on that range of issues based upon your sex.
Just because of your gender.
I think there is the expectation, but it's okay to go against the expectation.
I don't know. I got to think about that. Well, I'm pro-choice. So, you know, I want every woman to have a decision, to be able to make the decision based on what's best for her.
Yeah.
You know, and so the Senate bill, I don't know. You know, I know what's going on up there in Frankfurt, and I try to listen and not listen because I don't agree with some of the stuff. But yeah.
Except in the cases of rape, incest, or the life of a mother. I think that is a personal decision that should be made. And we got to remember that, you know, when we pass pieces of legislation, if the child's coming, we've got to take care of it.
That's the biggest thing there.
We got to take care of it.
That's right.
We got to be there for food and housing and whatever. I mean, people don't realize how many kids, I mean adults too, but kids that don't have a bed to sleep in, don't sleep in a bed. If they do, there's several others in the bed with them. And Kentucky has challenges. It's a great state. It's a beautiful state. It's a wonderful state. It's got great people. It's got great opportunities. But we've just got to get with it. She's young. She can handle it. But we've just got to face some of our challenges and find ways to solve them and bring, of course, I believe in the team approach. You know, I'm thinking, and yet we've got counties where the tax, there's just not enough money coming in for schools and law enforcement and whatever. So we got to have more jobs. And in order to have more jobs, we got to be able to have more trained kids and more educated people, adults too, that can pass a drug test. I mean, it's, you know, it's like this. And as I say, I just want us to face these things. It's a great place and there's lots of potential.
Do you feel, this is for the whole panel, do you feel like the tone surrounding both race and gender has gone backwards in recent years? The questioner asks, especially in the last 4 years.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
On both fronts?
Race, for sure. We're looking back to 1920, I don't know. But, I mean, you know, just the issues on race, you know, people, it's kind of like, you shouldn't be up front, get in the back of the line again. You know, those kinds of things. I mean, that's what I see and that's what I feel. And it's okay to be, to do ugly things to other people or to say things. It's kind of like people have permission to be mean and hateful to each other and hate. I think they've got the permission, and some folks act on that hate, and that's when we have issues. So that, yes, I see that.
How about, did you two want to weigh in on that one?
Well, I think she expresses it, having been, I mean, who she is and what she sees, and I wouldn't want to try to correct her in any way.
Well, the question again on that, Joe, was, I know it was race, and then was the other part of that?
Do you feel that the tone surrounding race and gender has gone backwards in recent years?
What about gender for you all?
She doesn't think so.
Yeah, I don't let things barricade me. I try to go right through them. I think that there's always the conversation about gender, and but I think sometimes if you put light to them, for me personally, if I put a light to it, then I feel like that stops me, and so I really just try to ignore it, or I mean, there are always things there, but I just try to move forward with it. But that's just how I've always dealt with things.
Well, I'm really proud of the women of Kentucky. I think, I mean, you look out here and we've got women all over the state that really serve their fellow man, and they're educated and they're trained and they're dedicated and they are hardworking, and I think it's wonderful. I'm proud to be a woman. I'm proud to be one of the crew.
I think we have time for one more question, so I'm going to combine two of them. One asks about what your platform would be if you were running for president today, and when they want a date, by what date do you see a female president being elected?
All right, who's going to tackle that one?
I don't know. What date?
I don't know, but I'm not going to run for president. I would.
What would you? Well, let's say that we're throwing your hat in the ring.
No.
What would your?
Thank you.
What would your platform be?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be to promote women, number one, and get more women into government and in roles of leadership, and but building teams. I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
But I think one thing that everybody seems to have brought up is just the vitriol is a lot. My guess is you're not a fan of that. With all that's going on in politics nowadays, that there's not much civil discourse.
Well, the hard part about it is there are many needs, but anything that you're going to do, you got to pay for. You got to figure out how to make it happen. And the long term, and then, of course, every time something comes up, I tell you what I think about. Having gone overseas and competing with them, trying to get more investments and things like that, the children and the education and for example, I'm concerned about the fact that the word service is just about gone out of our vocabulary. Service. You have to pump your own gas. You have to do whatever at the grocery store. I mean, we get out of that. Other countries are not doing that. They're serving. If you go to Japan or China or somewhere and you see a coat that you like, but it's the wrong color, they come in and they measure you and whatever, and they work all night and fix that coat, and it's in a box at your door before you leave to get on your plane. I mean, it's service. And when we have people who come to Kentucky and they want to open up a business or whatever, and we can't find enough workforce or people who want to work, what do you do? What do you do? And so, I don't know.
Well, let's go. All right, let's go over to you. Platform for president, and what year are we going to see a female president? Because that's a good way to end the night.
My platform would be, we're going 50-50. 50% men, 50% women. In every House, Senate, hard to say. That's the first thing. And as far as a female president, I'd say within the next 8 years.
You're an optimist.
Yeah, 8 years. I want to still be around. So I'm saying 8 years.
You want to go to inauguration?
All right, Samara?
I hope in my lifetime we see a female president, and I think that we will.
Well, Lord, you're only 27.
I know, she's a baby. Goodness.
How much time do we have?
I was going to say, I'm in trouble if that's the case.
It's a very politician answer. I hope in the next decade we see a female president. You know, I know on both sides there's rising stars, but I hope that we see that.
What would your platform be, though? I would like to know the perspective of a 27-year-old that to run for president, what your platform would be.
I can't even imagine. Running for the General Assembly was so exhausting. You know, I think, gosh, you know, I really think it would be about the American dream. To be honest, it's something we all continuously strive for. It's what we have on our mind, and continuing to make sure that Americans have the American dream that they choose, no matter what background that they come from. And so just, you know, reviving the American dream, I think, would be mine. I think it's so important that no matter where you come from, it only matters where you're going. And so whether you grew up in the poorest city in Kentucky or you grew up in the wealthiest county in Kentucky, you can all do the same thing. And I remember whenever I was trying to decide to run, my friend looked at me and she said, "Samara, you've got to run for office because little girls have to be able to look up to somebody in the legislature to know that they can run." And I cried because I am a crier, which is not positive sometimes. But you know, it's really, we've got to make sure that our youth know that they can do anything they set their mind to and to live the life that they want to live.
Very good. I think that's great. Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much. Let's give them another round of applause.
Good job. Good job.
You guys were a fantastic panel, so thank you again so very much for coming and participating tonight. Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, March 11th at Vincenzo's Restaurant. Our topic will be Chew on This, a Louisville restaurant tax. We will send out emailed invitations as soon as possible and update our website, so give us just a day or two to do that, and then please make your reservations. You can make reservations online at louisvilleforum.org or by calling 329-0111. And again, just a reminder, don't forget to pick up your April issue of Today's Woman to see Sissy laid out on a page spread for the 2020 Fleur-de-Lis recipient. So again, have a good evening. Thanks for coming and have a safe trip home.